Hey, everybody. Emily and I are back, and we've got a good, highly needed. Um, I don't know. I love this subject. I kind of don't want to love the subject, but I do. So, um, we are talking about impulsivity today, and with ADHD, that's a thing.
It sure
And
is.
it I'm going to go ahead and share this, but I think I'm going to go ahead and share this. There we go. Can you see this?
Yes.
All right. Except for that looks weird. Hmm.
What is it showing you? There we go.
Can, I just can't see you. That's lovely. Yeah. Okay. Meeting. I don't know what this is doing. I think I think this upgraded or not upgraded. It did upgrade stuff
Okay.
and now it's going to be weird. Okay, there we go. Okay, can you see my slide?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So, emotional impulsivity. And I started with communicating with yourself because, well, I feel like you got to learn how to do that before you can actually be as successful doing anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so what do you see on a normally basis or work with or anything to that extent?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it is across a lifespan.
Yeah.
And man, I mean, it was serendipitous that this is what we're talking about today, as um we had a stressful morning and that emotional impulsivity as I noticed various family members sharing how they were feeling out loud and or in different moments and then noticing some of the ways that I am communicating with myself. And so one thing actually since being on medication that's helped me slow down with communicating with myself is n- noticing that everything was spiraling around me, how I was reacting and feeling about it. And then one of the ways that I've communicated to myself to try to slow down is is like squeezing my legs. And so that way I'm noticing, man, I'm like shaking and I want to just let it all out, but this would not
Hmm.
be productive or effective.
Yeah.
And so then it's communicating with ourselves like, hey, this is what helps me to slow down in the moment, not ignoring how I'm feeling, not ignoring my frustration,
Yep.
but giving myself that moment to just notice and observe.
Yep.
I physically need to kind of let it out. So that squeezing or tension is a way to help myself kind of communicate it. And then afterwards, sometimes I have to write it out as a way of communicating with myself. So again, it doesn't come out impulsively on others as I spew my fire hose of frustration and overwhelm. Um, So that I think that impulsivity is also just acknowledging that sometimes we feel things really big and knowing that with ADHD and or other neurodivergent parts of ourselves, emotions can feel really big. And that's not manipulative, that's not being dramatic, it just is.
Yeah.
But then how can we also hold ourselves accountable to doing it differently?
Okay, so let me just say the like in my eyes, like what you just said is like a massive golden nugget that as always easier said than done, but two parts for me on that is um emotions with ADHD are also in my experience and with of course my kids, etc. Like we feel big and we feel deep, whether it be good or whether it be the stuff that we don't really want to feel. Um, and I don't know. I used to be very, very ashamed of those because I've always been a crier. And I'm great with that now. I don't care. Um, and I've gotten used to it, understanding that it is it is how all the different ways in which my body is getting out or showing the emotion. And um sometimes it is um sometimes it's playing with my fidgets just to like get myself a little bit regulated if I'm not in a space where I can do something um, more kinesthetic.
Hmm.
But I I think you were on point earlier of really understanding what it looks like for you because um, I mean, we know that everybody is different. Everybody handles things different. Um, and that's like if you understand how your body is handling it or not. But learning how to learning how to communicate with your body, I think, is one of the toughest parts because it's not, in my experience, as generally a verbal like we don't talk to ourselves as much. We can. And sometimes it takes the like us actually saying it out loud to be like, oh, but and honestly, this is something I'm like actively learning in doing somatic therapy is rewiring and teaching my body like I'm sitting in an office right now. I am not currently being chased by a pack of hungry lions who are going to chase me off a cliff and attempts to eat me. Correct. But it takes me learning how to communicate with myself like, okay, I can feel the tense, I can feel the tightening of like shoulders and things. And um and honestly sometimes I've had to learn how to do that, especially if I'm in somewhere that like I can't excuse myself
Hmm.
necessarily because, you know, we unfortunately we don't get to schedule or choose when those things happen. That would be nice. Um, but learning how your body communicates that to you because it's usually, in my experience, physical things. Um, and then I don't know, setting yourself up as best you can for success.
Hmm.
That may be as I always have a little plastic band on my arm to help that regulation. It really depends to me on what that looks like for you. And I don't know, Emily, if you've experienced this, is it's something that you just have to be aware of because a lot of times we've gotten so accustomed to like the coping mechanisms that we don't know that we already do a lot of these things.
Hmm.
Um, and I for my rubber band
Yeah.
or my incessant anxiety ice chewing. Like your body usually tells you kind of what it needs, whether or
Hmm.
not you understand what that need is actually doing.
Yes, like what it's serving.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, I was shocked when I was sitting in a therapy session years ago and I was telling her all of my, like, I was telling her some of my bad habits, and I'm like, yeah, I'd really like to not ice chew. And she goes, well, you realize that's probably your body self-regulating because the ice is cooling down your nervous system when you're in crisis mode. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay. But so I mean it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. But like it is what it is.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I'm rambling now. Um, but I think that all leads kind of beautifully into numero dos is kind of how you were experiencing this morning, how to communicate needs to loved ones.
Hmm.
And preferably not in a explosive manner. Easier said than done.
Hmm.
Um, so do you have any examples of how you've been either successful or um not?
Not successful. Um, Again, I think it is helpful to notice our a differences in age and or kind of growth.
Yeah.
So my 8-year-old communicates needs. The newest thing is really a lot of inversions, and he has figured out even how to do that in the car. And somehow his seatbelt is still slightly on, but it's when he's very overwhelmed and he is not recognizing, but he's communicating in his body and noises and other things that he is upset, overwhelmed, and overstimulated.
Yeah.
And um, so sometimes that need is to be quiet, some that he needs everyone else to be quiet. Sometimes the need is also be validated that I see what he's experiencing. Is it effective? No, unless it's with me, because unfortunately not everyone else knows how to read his communication styles.
Yeah.
But right, that is a communication. So I think that's similar to like what you were saying, Lauren, of our body sometimes does this intuitively. And so
Hmm.
then it's saying, so how can I slow it down in advance? So before he needs to kind of roll himself around, what could be said? Or in that moment, could he communicate it in a more effective way?
Yeah.
But sometimes effective is also getting your needs met. So if screaming means that then everyone else is quiet, his need of everyone else being quiet was met.
Yes. That well, so I'm like laughing in my head a little bit because
Hmm.
it's like it's entertaining. We shut down. Humans, people in general, want to shut that down so fast.
Mhm.
And it's like every parent's, I feel like, worst nightmare to be, in public somewhere with your child having a screaming meltdown. And it all those things to me, I used to be that parent before I knew anything about myself or my kids. And I I was just like, no, I will not give in to that. I will not be the parent that like lets that be okay, blah, blah, blah. And the more I've learned about how my kids, heck, and myself, um,
Mhm.
communicate those things, and um, it is so much more of like, okay, like how else were they going to get your attention? The like you were zoned, or you were doing this, or you were talking about this, and everybody else was being loud too. So wouldn't it be logical for them to get louder than everybody else because they need to get your attention to get it to be quiet for them? And when you flip the script and the narrative a little bit like that, I think um, the perspective flips. Um, and I think so much of like I feel like life is just like go, go, go. How much can we squeeze into a day these days? And I
Yep.
was telling somebody, might have been my mom this the other day, actually, and we were talking about how rigorous some school schedules are for kids. And I'm like relating that to my work life. And I'm thinking, I get home at the end of the day, and after all the people who are asking me questions, all the tasks that need to happen, whether it is personal or professional or whatever else, I'm done.
Mhm.
And I'm an adult. And, my kids don't necessarily know how to communicate those things to me other than like maybe that looks like a tantrum when they get
Mhm.
home. Maybe it could look like a lot of different things. And when I really put that in perspective, I'm like, okay, looking at their schedules and how much they've been going today, these kids are elementary, right? I'm like, um, yeah, they're overstimulated and done. So am
Right.
I. But they just communicate it in a different way. I can sit there and say, I need downtime, and I know why. They don't know why. And I don't know. It's really hard to, I think, figure out how to communicate effectively with loved ones sometimes because everybody kind of has their own agenda.
Mhm.
And I happen to be direct. And so, I walk in my house and I'm like, y'all, I need 30 minutes of nobody. Um, but, as parents, we get into delegation mode of do this, 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 and this when you get home, whether that's putting your stuff up, whether that's whatever it is.
Right.
And what would happen if we gave our kids a break from their grueling days? And since we expect them to follow directions right off the bat, right? And when they have the meltdown of, I don't want to do that. Well, of course they don't. They just had as grueling a day as we did.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I read something the other day, and tell me your thoughts about this, especially with your profession. Um, we don't look at our kids enough as individual people. We look at them as, I don't want to say pawns, but almost like we don't look at them as their own individual because we know how young they are and how much they have to develop. But we don't, I don't feel like we give them the space to be their own individual person early enough and figure out what that looks like.
Mm. I think I think at times, or it depends on which family system that
Yeah.
is, or how that shows up for
Yeah.
each of us, or even like their temperament versus ours. But I do think that genetic piece, which is sometimes where we want things to be better for them than they
Yeah.
were for us, or we see where different things or some that they if they could learn that, then it might be easier for them. The other piece is sometimes if they could do it, it'd be easier for us too, right?
Yeah,
Like if
that's
they
true.
could remember to pull out their lunchbox, then it's one less thing I have to remember. And so it's like a yes and of like how do we
Yeah.
communicate those needs? And that's where sometimes it's saying we both have needs and they are in alignment.
There you go. I like that.
And yet at times that when we both have needs, they're actually the same need, which means they're not in alignment because you need a break and I need a break.
Mhm.
Oh shoot. So they don't want to unload their lunchbox, but now we have to remember that they didn't unload their lunchbox because they need a break. But that means we need to do the executive functioning, our cognitive load to remember that the lunchbox didn't get unloaded. Or maybe I'm the only one that ever opened the backpack on a Monday and goes, oh, shoot. That's gross. Um, but right, that's where that Friday need, where they're
Yeah.
like, I just need Friday. And I'm like, but I need to wrap up Friday so we can have a good, but they can't. So sometimes again,
Yeah.
it's communicating those needs and noticing at times they're in alignment and that flows well together, and other times they're in alignment and that means we're in direct competition with each other.
Ooh, I like how you put it that way.
It's exhausting, man.
It is exhausting. And for here's a good laugh for today. As you're talking about emptying lunch boxes, I may or may not have thrown away a bag of highly moldy apples
Mm-hmm.
from a backpack today. And I'm like, well, that's nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
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 Um, well, and I think that is a fabulous segue into this next one of
Yep.
tools and skills. Um, this just kind of makes me laugh because I'm like, so many.
So many.
What? Okay, so when you very first think tools and skills, what does your brain pop up with first?
Um, the dopamine loves all the things, like the fidgets or all the whatever, but the practicality of me is no, it's really noticing the body. And so, man, this morning for me, the biggest tool was noticing there's tension. Man, I'm feeling pulled. Man, I'm being distracted on a telehealth for my one person, and now I'm getting text messages, which now is distraction, and now there's this. And so noticing all of these inputs,
Yeah,
noticing how my body was responding. I use that as a tool. And then the skill came in. How do I slow it down?
yeah,
What can I turn off? Like if it's extra stimuli, if it's this, that, or the other, what what is available to me. And sometimes the only thing that's available is noticing and acknowledging. And then
Yep.
being really honest, like today, even at now 1:30, like I am drained. Like our morning was really crummy.
Yeah.
And then leading straight into seeing clients, like, yeah, I have not really recalibrated,
Yeah.
which is a great piece so that you're bringing up, which means when I go to school pickup today, remembering that if I haven't really recalibrated, they probably haven't either.
Yes.
So the skill for me is also trying to be future focused and saying, so how can I help make this afternoon run more smoothly?
Yes. I would actually completely agree with that because we talk about like you said, the shiny things all the time. And I love talking about the shiny things. I love the shiny things. But I mean, at the end of the day, um, I feel like the shiny things are extra.
Hmm.
They are great, they are helpful, but um, and before I say this, please know that yes, I am a utilizer of the medications and I love them. They help so drastically. However, they don't build the skills for me. They help me with the skills. Um,
Hmm.
and so I think a big one for me, a big skill is setting up setting up my day with the morning and afternoon, evening routines is so critical. And do they always go great? Nope. Um, do I mean, do I oversleep sometimes? Yes, and I am not one to press snooze, but building those base layer skills as how I need them to work for me and be effective, as you've said a few times, um, is big because then when life happens, as it inevitably will, um, you've got that base layer of
Hmm.
here's how to here's how to do this, and your body automatically does the thing that you need it to do. Can you see my pop-up or is that me?
No.
No. Okay, lovely. There we go. It's gone. My computer's being mean today. Of course it
Of course.
is. Um, all right. So then I know we're just about out of time here, but how to repair?
Hmm.
Um, for me, that's just an open conversation, but I I am also a get things out on the table because otherwise they eat away at me. Not everybody likes to do that or is comfortable with that.
So what does that look like when you say that? Get it out on the table. What do you
Um,
do?
so like last week, I got some disappointing news and I was really upset about it. I had told my husband like he knew what happened, but I walked in the door and obviously he already knows I'm probably upset and looks at me and says, "You okay?" And, I just shook my head and kept going. He goes, "You want to talk about it?" No. Well, then later he came and found me and knew I needed to talk about it because that's how I process through. But, and granted, he was trying to be a little bit comical relief and to help me out a little bit. And he said something, and I looked at him, um, and, not defensive, but I was just like, that wasn't helpful. And like in the past, like I've snapped, but it was just like, that I'm upset. I understand what he's trying to do, but I'm like, that's not helpful right now.
Mhm.
And so he goes, okay, like, do you need a hug? What do you need? And, but being able, instead of holding that in for me, it was because if I had held it in, I'd have been upset all night. It would have just eaten away
Mhm.
at me all night. And instead, I calmly, that's not what I need right now. Try again. And just, I don't know. It's kind of the thing where like we can't read what's in people's mind, nor can they read ours. And so
Mhm.
we have to figure out a hopefully non or least amount explosive way to least amount. I'm not perfect. I'm human. But we've got to figure out what that looks like and what that looks like for both parties because it is a two-way street when you're
Right.
in that communication, whether it be spouse, kid, friend, coworker, whatever.
Yeah. I think that's, I mean, it's great that you were able to notice and like say it in the moment. And it also sounds like some of that work where he was able to not be defensive and then just acknowledge it. And you were able to not be one holding it in to then be kind of
Yeah.
a passive aggressive later, even inadvertently.
Yeah.
And so I love though acknowledging like it is variable. It is intention and it is at times though we don't do it well and we do
Yeah.
explode and that's where I think just acknowledging that the repair is so important
Mm-hmm.
and even that just in of itself can sometimes just be like well it is and whether or not we had intended to harm someone or had meant to
Yeah.
not be helpful, right? Like he was trying to connect
Yeah.
with you, but
Yeah.
it wasn't helpful. And him just acknowledging, hey, that I missed the mark. What do you need?
Yeah.
Right there is a repair. It's not even always an apology.
No.
No. And I think that's where we can also take some of that shame that
Yeah.
we might feel of like, oh, we missed the mark. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
We're going to.
Yeah. Well, and so this may be this may be my unpopular opinion. I don't know. Um, and there's something very valuable about an apology. However, um, I also think as a society, we are so over apologetic for everything that sometimes it doesn't need an apology. It just needs context of, hey, like, yes, I'm sorry, but like, I need you to know, like, this is what I need. Or like, you can be there for somebody and not necessarily just be like, I don't know. I again, it may be my unpopular opinion, I don't know, but I don't I don't like over apologizing and people pleasing. And that has been such a thing that I've had to work on in the past, but it's also a boundary thing for me
Hmm.
of here's where I need you to recognize my boundary and let's work on that.
Yeah. So I think again that repair is really
Yeah.
just it's a conversation. It's sometimes it's also just accountability of acknowledging we missed
Yeah.
the mark, they missed the mark, whatever it was. Sometimes
Yep.
there is an apology,
Yep.
especially if there was some maybe that emotionality or
Yeah.
the things went farther than we had intended.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's a conversation. I love that.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Um, yeah, and I think it's important that I've made the mistake of making everything a very formal apology or a very formal conversation, which I think makes a lot of people sometimes uncomfortable.
Mm.
Things have gone a lot better for me when I have made it just a casual, like, discussion instead of somebody sitting down and me being like, okay, can we talk? And all of a sudden we feel like we're in trouble and get defensive. So, um,
Great, great nugget right there.
mm, unfortunately, I've learned that too many times. Um, well, we are at the end of our time, but we will be back soon for more lovely conversations and big nuggets because they're fun.
Yes.
Yes. All right, everybody, we will see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.